All right, Paul Hefty here. I want to talk about positive discipline. It's a method of managing behavior. What we'll do is we'll talk about what it exactly is, and then look at some preventive discipline techniques and some successful strategies to apply this method to your rewards and discipline system as a coach. So managing your athlete's behavior, positive discipline, what is it exactly? It's a style of discipline that you use with your team and with individuals to train them so that they develop self-control while correcting their mistakes. It's a use of equitable treatment versus equal treatment, meaning we're going to let the people know what behavior is acceptable by providing an opportunity for improvement and a connection before correction. So John Wooden, who we introduced before as a model, great role model, used what he called equitable treatment. And his quote was, he believed that every player deserved to be treated fairly, meaning that each athlete or person was treated differently depending on how they behave. So you can see we're going to go ahead and correct mistakes, and the positive discipline then is about teaching a behavior as well as correcting the behavior. So when we talk about managing behaviors, we first got to make sure we understand there's two different types of mistakes or misbehaviors. First type is when they're trying to perform the skill, but they just can't do it quite yet. They haven't mastered it, but the effort is there. The second type is where the player just willfully misbehaves. Again, the effort is not there, but the effort isn't actually misbehaving. Then you need to take action right away, and you need to correct the behavior. So key number one, know when your player needs instruction or correction and provide that. And then key number two, use preventive discipline then if the player is willfully misbehaving. All right, when we're talking about applying preventive discipline, there's a couple steps here as a leader you need to apply. First off, you've got to have the right team culture. And we've talked about why this is important. It's kind of the foundation to create some of those values you want of trust and respect so that you can empower and enable and provide opportunities for responsibility by your team and your team leaders. Remember to take into account that team readiness or what phase your team or your program's in, the forming, storming, norming, and performing, and then you can apply that situational leadership, the different styles at the different times that are needed. Number two, holding team meetings. Why is this so important? Communication. We've got to be able to create consistent opportunities to listen and learn both as leaders, but also as the followers or people in the program. It's a chance to kind of educate and grow, and I like to talk about it as we're never staying the same. We're not changing just to change, but we're evolving as we go forward. We want to keep these short. We want to be consistent so that they're impactful. And then again, do problem solving. You need to ask questions and get feedback to make sure what you're talking about, the input, is actually making an impact and it's an investment in your team's development. Step three then, develop those team rules or expectations. Just as we said, you can't assume people understand what's acceptable, what's not, so you've got to make it clear by establish some standards, talk about then the consequences, and then, as always, trying to be as fair and consistent as possible. Step number four, you need to create team routines. The reason this is important is, again, when a routine creates clear expectations, and it just helps them in their decision process. It's real simple. If you're not having consistent communication or feedback, then there's opportunity for anything and everything to happen. Step five, you want to be active and fun and exciting competitive practices. Again, I use what's called a slow to fast progression so that we speed things up as we go and keep things moving, keep things busy. It's just like dealing with youth sport activities or young kids. If they're not being active, then bad things are going to happen. We want to do the same thing in our practice routines. And again, then a balance of games and drills. Create those competitive environments, games approach. A real good example is to use good versus good and competitive full speed right after stretching, and it kind of sets a tone every now and then at the start of a week. Step 6, catch them doing good. Real simple. It's the whole idea of positive discipline. You can make corrections if you're being really positive when they do something really good. You don't want to miss those opportunities either. So reward the performance of effort, not the outcomes. That's the key. Give everybody a chance to improve and give everybody a role and make it performance of their effort, not of the product of what they're doing. So the key to positive discipline methods is understand how to correct and have corrective disciplines. Number one, what we're trying to do here with the positive discipline approach is try to minimize punishments or negatives of that and try to motivate them to perform better by simply giving them ways to improve. A good example is when they're doing something unsuccessfully, instead of trying to tell them what they're doing wrong, tell them how to do it correctly and how to improve it. The goal here again with the athletes is for them to develop that self-discipline. So we have to teach them in a way that they can understand it and apply it themselves. Otherwise, getting then self-improvement. Corrective discipline 2 is, again, it's about using instruction and teaching and training so that they not only do the skills for the sport, but it's life skills. That punishment is just a short-term solution, and it's something that's here and then gone. So we want to make sure we're trying to use corrective discipline that supports, again, things on and off the field. Question always says, when is negative punishment necessary? There is a place always, and that's, again, we go back to safety number 1, legal number 2, and then your own philosophy 3. When you've got to stop an unsafe or violent type behavior, you got to do that now, and there's no nice way to do it. You just got to stop it in its tracks. All right, little workshop here. You want to pause the video and do this, write these things down. Again, we're just doing strategies for correcting that behavior with an individual or a team. So first off, just list why athletes misbehave. And this is kind of fun. You can think of from past experiences, either from your own experience or from being in teams. And then list that strategies for correcting that behavior using the positive discipline approach versus just straight negative punishment. Remember these key points. Athletes usually misbehave for one of 2 reasons. It could be they're just discouraged and it may have nothing to do about you. They're having a bad experience either at home, school, with friends, family, or they just are being treated negatively and beaten down. So make sure you know all about what's impacting them. Number 2, this is really typical. They just, when you have student athletes that don't feel like they really have a role or that they have any chance to improve, then they're really going to feel insecure and not part of that team. So again, that's why motivation keys are having fun and giving everyone a self-worth. So stop and write some of these things down. All right, after you did the brainstorming session on those strategies, let's go over a couple strategies or ideas for correcting behavior. Number 1, you've got to make sure that you have team rules, and so everybody understands what's expected, and also what are the consequences for that. Remember, again, the 3 steps as a head coach. We always want to do safety first, legal second, and then our own personal leadership philosophy second. Be respectful, but you've got to be firm. Sometimes you've got to tell people no, and no is a complete sentence. Address the misbehaviors quickly and consistently. If you let them go, and it's human nature to avoid telling people what they don't want to hear, but you're best to do that right at the beginning, and again, be respectful and firm but consistent. Be highly predictable. This is why having routines and being consistent in your message is so important. It makes sure then the players know that this is truly you caring for them and not just being reactive. Again, talk about ways to improve versus always pointing out the negative behavior. Be very specific. You want to teach and instruct. So again, don't assume people understand. You make sure they use cue words that will make sense to both the individual and the team. And then last, just avoid long lecturing at nagging or sermon type things. It starts to lose its value. So you want it to be impactful, be it quick, be consistent, but then move forward and give them an opportunity to improve. Make sure that you're confident in what you're doing before you communicate. So it's okay to pause until you have all the information and make important decisions so that they're appropriate. It's also good if you're a transformational leadership style to use your leaders or your staff as part of the process. Make sure you're not making reactionary decisions. You're using logic. So again, if you're angry, make sure you let the dirt settle a little bit. This is key. Once the compliance is gained, let the athlete know that it's a fresh start. You need to forgive and move forward. Don't assume they just understand that. Make sure you tell them and then give them an honest opportunity to improve. Make sure you're using really positive nonverbal communication. Nothing means something. So again, if you don't say anything, then people are going to look at your body movements and fill in the blanks for you. Make sure you're continually telling people what's correct, what's wrong, and what is acceptable or unacceptable. Don't assume they understand. With those attention seekers, make sure you do that in private because that's what they want. So that's a great time to pull them aside and again, give them all the expectations of what's acceptable, what's not. When a player does misbehave, make sure you address the behavior and not the character. You don't want to embarrass somebody. Again, we want to be safe. We want to do things legally, but you want to do it in a way that you're sensitive and respectful. And then last, they should never be harmful physically or psychologically. Some tips here then at the end. Make sure the players have the right to make and have the power to make those decisions themselves. They know what's right. They know what's wrong. They have the power to make quality choices. Avoid those public confrontations. Just talk to them like they're a human being and teach. The only time there's a loud voice or yelling should be involved, it's to get their attention more than it is as a reaction to their misbehaving. Make sure you crush kind of the tension after negative feedback. I had a great mentor who could be very demanding, very tough, but right away then had a way of crushing that whole tension. So they understood it wasn't personal at any time and that we were moving forward and again got us into that fun mode and also improvement mode. Effective consequences is the losses of privileges. Again, the limited opportunity to play, those type of things, be part of the team is a loss of privileges and hopefully is a motivation for them to improve. And then key with all of this is just you've got to consistently reward positive behavior right away. Give those, never let a positive opportunity go by. All right, here at the end, rewards discipline kind of workshop and clinic. And this is real important. You would want to write these down because this is going to be the foundation for your rewards and discipline system where you'll fill out this template. You can see the links here. What you want to do is design that system, your rewards and discipline system. You want to talk about specific policies for your rewards and then specific policies for your discipline system. Reflect back on, this should match up with your coaching style and talk about that and then use that previous workshop where we talked about reasons athletes misbehave and then more importantly, some strategies to correct that behavior using a positive discipline system. Last piece here is we've got some examples of corrective discipline in action. So you can click on the link. It's a high school program where they used a reward system to basically provide their athletes an opportunity to make some big changes, character issues, and then use the opportunity to keep competing as a team as the reward for that. Remember, questions for you to answer. What situational phase is that team in? The forming, storming, norming, performing phase, and that may dictate what type of leader you need to be. Another example is a full value contract. Again, you can do this at the beginning where you talk about being part of the team as a privilege, and then just have a full value contract on between the players and yourself on what is expected, what is unacceptable, what is acceptable, and the consequences. And then third, when best to state expectations as a head coach. Again, remember, we want to think about safety first, legal second, and then your own leadership philosophy last. The whole key here is a high-functioning team all understands what is acceptable, what isn't, and is all in full value contract, accepting that, respecting that, and trusting that from you as a leader. Thanks.